Okay, this is for Governor Dr. Washburn.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We read in the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." And each one of us has to decide whether we're going to serve the Lord or serve the enemy, serve the devil, serve our own flesh. Each one of us is a sinner in need of God's grace. Now, I did a radio talk show in Little Rock, Arkansas for 7 years and 3 months. It's a little thing we like to call News Radio 1029 KARN. If you've ever been down towards Little Rock, you might have heard me do a talk show. And my effort every day was to try to glorify God in whatever I did. My job was to talk about what is in the news every day. And so if we had some kind of issue that touched on matters of faith and morality, I tried to be real clear about where I was coming from as a believer. August of last year, the CEO of the national company, Cumulus Media, that owned the radio station, announced that she was really thrilled that so many of her employees had gotten vaccinated, and she was angry with the ones who hadn't. And she said, "I'm giving y'all 2 months. If you're not fully vaccinated by October 11th, you're fired." And so that's how I lost the longest job I ever had in my life. But you know, God works all things together for the good of them that love Him and called according to His purposes. And so, since we had like a 2-month notice, some friends of mine and I talked about it, and they invested in starting off in a national podcast at something called DocWashburnShow.com. We do 5 shows a week on that. And after a few weeks, we got some advertisers, started making money, so that was good. Over the years, since I've been in Little Rock, every once in a while somebody would say, "Well, you need to run for office." I said, no, you got the wrong guy. I'm not cut out for that. I'm the guy that interviews those people. I'm never going to run for office. Well, when you use a word like never, sometimes the Lord thinks that's kind of funny. It was late January, early February when Sarah Huckabee Sanders endorsed Senator Bozeman for re-election, who had blamed the violence on January 6th on President Trump and said the idea that the election was stolen was ridiculous. And she endorsed French Hill for re-election, who had said the same things. And she got hundreds of angry responses on her Facebook page. My phone started ringing. People saying, "You need to run for governor." I said, nope, sorry, got the wrong guy. Hope somebody else does, but not me. And then Jan Morgan called me. Now, for those of y'all who don't know, Jan Morgan is a strong conservative who has a firearms training center down in Hot Springs. She had the courage to challenge Governor Hutchinson 4 years ago in the Republican primary for governor, and she's now challenging Senator Bozeman for re-election in the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, Arkansas. And when I told Jan no, she said, "Look, you don't understand what's going on." She said, "We're about to lose our country. Good people like you need to stand up and run for office. You need to talk to your wife and pray about it." Well, when you tell a believer to talk to his wife and pray about something, what am I supposed to do? Say no? I'm like, "Okay, Jen, I'll talk to my wife and we'll pray about it." So I talked to my wife and we prayed about it. She said, "Honey, this is way over my head. I trust your judgment." But I knew that Proverbs talks about the importance of wise counsel, and also says there's wisdom in the abundance of counsel. And I couldn't just decide to do something like this without wise counsel. So 24 hours after that phone call with Jan Morgan, on Monday evening, February 7th, I met with 10 or 11 people in a conference room at a church in North Little Rock. And we just kind of kicked around the idea of should I run for governor for about 2.5 hours. The 2 main questions I remember, one was, okay, a lot of people don't know what happened to you since you're not on the radio anymore. Would this be a publicity stunt to, let people know about the podcast? Or if you decide to run for governor, are you actually going to try to win? I said, no, if I run for governor, I'm in it to win it. There's no point in doing a publicity stunt, asking people to volunteer and raise money. That'd be ridiculous. And the other question I got was, what would your top priority be in a run for governor of Arkansas? I said, to glorify God. We're supposed to glorify God in everything we do. And when I said that, Jan Morgan said, that's what I've been waiting to hear. So at the end of the 2.5 hours, it was unanimous. There were no dissenting votes. We hope you do this. Now, I was already scheduled to speak to the Saline County Republican Women's Club 24 hours later. I told them what I thought it meant that Sarah had endorsed Senator Bozeman and Congressman French Hill for re-election. What I thought it meant that when Governor Hutchinson endorsed her, she talked about what a great job he'd been doing. Now, forget about all the small businesses he shut down in 2020. Forget about the mandates that when you walk into a restaurant, you got to wear a mask until you sit down and make your drink order your Coke or your Sprite or whatever, and then you take the mask off, because I guess the China virus is polite. And telling them all you got to close at 10, because I guess the Wu flu is nocturnal. Around 11 o'clock or midnight, it gets real dangerous. Forget about all that. Forget about mask mandates for 5-year-olds. I don't know how many y'all, and I got to be careful the way I discuss this with small ears. I don't know how many y'all know about the SAFE Act that Asa vetoed. Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, the puberty blockers. And he vetoed it because Walmart didn't like it. And he went on Tucker Carlson's show on Fox News and lied about it, and Tucker proved he lied about it. There was testimony that was taken from quote-unquote medical experts against the bill. God bless him. Senator Bart Hester asked a question of a pediatrician, Dr. Natalie Burr, Little Rock Pediatrics. He said, is 4 years old too young to have decided that you were assigned the wrong gender? She said, well, it's certainly not too young to start the counseling process for the transgender deal. So it was a great bill, but save adolescents from experimentation is kind of a misnomer. No, it's to save everybody under 18. I don't know how you can know that that man vetoed that bill and say he's been doing a great job for Arkansas. It's outrageous. I have said publicly it's an outrage that he wasn't kicked out of the Republican Party for that. They kicked Liz Cheney out of the Republican Party in Wyoming for 2 reasons. She won't stop criticizing Donald Trump, and she refuses to go to county Republican Party meetings. I think what Asa did is a lot worse than that. So I talked about all these things to the ladies of Saline County Republican Women's Club Tuesday evening, February 8th. Talked about what I think it means that so many people on her Facebook page saying, why won't you answer any questions, Sarah? Why won't you talk about any issues? And I said, look, it costs $15,000 to file to run for governor in the state of Arkansas. I don't have the money. If the Lord provides the money, I'm going to file. I'm running for governor. And they started contributing that evening. So, enough about Sarah. What do I want to do? If y'all elect me governor of the state of Arkansas, I plan to drastically cut the size and scope of this state government to get them off your back and out of your wallet. Thank you. Sarah says the same thing about the state income tax that Asa says. Well, we're going to gradually decrease it. Got to be careful. 0.2% a year. So maybe by the time some of these little folk are our age, they'll finally get rid of it. That's not good enough. I want to get rid of it now. Now, one of the speakers said we got a $1.2 billion tax surplus. I look at it differently than he does. That means they've been taxing the living daylights out of us. Inexcusable. We're one of the highest tax states in the country, certainly the highest tax state in the Mid-South area. We got to get rid of the income tax, the state income tax, personal income tax, I mean, also the income tax of small businesses, also the tax on used goods. I recently got a great deal on a 2013 Honda Accord, only 85,000 miles on it, $15,000. Mitch Ward over at Red River took care of me, and I went to DMV, and they're so nice at the DMV. Okay, honey, now you got to call and get your assessment. I'm like, oh, great. And the lady on the other end of the phone was so nice. Okay, you owe us a sales tax of $1,038. I'm like, okay, great. I thought the guy who bought it knew paid that. That's right, honey, you're going to pay it too. And when you trade it in, the next one, and the next one, and the next one. That's outrageous. You've got a state government that is trolling mothers on Facebook, trying to sell used clothes that their children have grown out of. Oh, you owe us tax on that. People set up some kind of a swap meet to sell used stuff in a parking lot. They find out about it. They don't want a tax on that too. It's outrageous. You know, I'm not afraid to say that they stole the election, because they did steal the election. A lot of us went to bed on Tuesday night, November 3rd, 2020, watching Fox News. Trump has a comfortable lead in all these swing states. Wake up the next morning like, what happened? Well, it was a ballot drop is what happened. And he said that if Biden gets into the Oval Office, China's going to take over, and they're sure trying to do that. Canceling the Keystone XL pipeline, the Biden inflation, which a lot of it is tied to, you know, our oil situation, is intentional. He's not running the shop. You know that. He has dementia. He can hardly decide whether he's going to get vanilla or chocolate tapioca pudding. The people behind him hate you and me, and they're trying to punish us. They hate the idea of America, and they're trying to punish us. The governor of a state has to figure out a way to push back. We feel the pain whenever we go to the grocery store, whenever we put gas in the tank. We still have a 2.25% state grocery tax. We've got to get rid of that. We've got to cut the gas tax. We can't get rid of it entirely, but we've got to cut that. Now, Doc, how are you going to pay for all this? Well, a friend of mine named David Crow did an article in 2017 in Conduit News, compared Arkansas with all the other states around us, compared Arkansas with the states that are about the same population as us, and we spend so much more money per capita per year than all these other states. And we have so many more state employees than all these other states. Immediate hiring freeze. We lose over 5% by attrition of state employees every year. Okay, we could save hundreds of millions that way. And part of this $1.2 billion should do something that nobody's ever done before, which is do a forensic audit of all the departments, all the agencies, to see where the money's being wasted. Because it is being wasted. There's no question about it. You know, the scripture says something else. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Now, when I look at all the horror stories coming out of the nursing homes, we're not doing that. There's something called the Office of Long-Term Care that's supposed to be inspecting them. And I talked to an attorney for Department of Human Services. He said, well, we don't have enough people in that Office of Long-Term Care, so the nursing homes, they self-inspect, and we just audit here and there. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Day one, I would issue an executive order ordering the Office of Long-Term Care to enforce the law. I've had too many people in the nursing home industry say, no, they don't inspect. They just show up and sign some paperwork, shake hands with the manager, and go about their business. We have a child welfare agency, DCFS. Again, I'm trying to do this right with an all-ages group, but there have been some horror stories. I know folks, some horror stories. If I'm elected governor, child welfare workers will have to wear a body cam when they're interacting with parents and children. They'll have to give parents Miranda rights, and I will order them to stop forcing their way into people's homes because the parents don't know their constitutional rights. It's got to stop. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I got a friend named Mark Diggs. He has a nonprofit called Veterans Villages of America. They do a lot to help veterans. Regular basis, he hears from veterans are homeless. Regular basis, he hears from veterans don't have enough money to buy groceries. And these folks don't realize that they are due federal benefits. Now, there is an office in each one of the 75 counties that's supposed to be coordinating to make sure this doesn't happen. Make sure our veterans are taken care of. It's not happening. It's not happening. If you like me, Governor, it'll happen. I will instruct my staff to reach out to all 75 county judges and see what we need to do to make sure at least they got a big enough annual budget to take care of our veterans. I mean, anybody who's willing to put on the uniform and risk their lives for us, that needs to be taken care of. Sometimes people ask me, are you going to challenge Sarah to a debate? I said, well, I'd be happy to debate her, but there's no point in that because there are too many things she can't talk about. I didn't really understand the whole issue when I first got to Arkansas, of the consolidation of the rural school districts. Because everywhere I've ever lived, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, North and South Carolina, you have as many school districts as you have counties. So I didn't understand it until a little while back. Senator Charles Beckham in South Arkansas, he explained to me, well, Doc, here's the deal. I've got constituents who have to put their 5-year-olds on a school bus before dawn to ride 2 hours one way. I'm like, oh, well, that's child abuse. That's horrific. Now, that's something that Governor Mike Huckabee and the Democrats in the state legislature, back when they had a supermajority in there, conspired to do back in '04 because it's going to save money. Well, it turns out it didn't save money. But how do you put a 5-year-old on a school bus to go 2 hours one way? I mean, what if they got to go potty? I'm flabbergasted. I talked to some ladies in Perrin, Arkansas a while back, and they talked to me how devastating it had been to their community. Obviously, been devastating to a lot of other communities. We got to undo what they did. We have to undo what they did, and we also have to have real school choice. The money should follow the children, not the failing government schools. Now, we talk about that term, failing government schools. I don't really think the government schools are failing, because I think they are accomplishing exactly what they want to do, which in all too many situations is to seek to indoctrinate our children in a worldview that is anathema to us. Again, we're not laboring against flesh and blood here. It is a cosmic battle. So somebody said, well, what is the worst problem in Arkansas? And I said, abortion. You know, that murder is illegal against all but these folks. And we don't know what's going to happen with the U.S. Supreme Court. We hope and we pray that in June, at the end of the session, that they will overturn Roe. We don't know. I'm told that we have a trigger bill that if they do, it will outlaw abortion. But I've actually read the bill, and it doesn't really deal with the first 8 weeks. I've been told, oh, no, it outlaws RU46. But I'm looking at the plain language of the bill, and no, it doesn't. And so we need something stronger than that, whether they overturn Roe or they don't overturn Roe. I'll try to do one more thing. I'm sorry I'm going so long. So last summer, Governor Hutchinson did a COVID-19 town hall in a place called Siloam Springs. And people were yelling at him. They were angry because they had family members going to the hospital and not getting treated. Going home, come back if you feel worse. And Asa seemed shocked. He said, well, of course they're getting therapeutics at the hospital. Isn't that right? Turned to a hospital administrator standing there and said, not presently. Asa's like, what was that? Like you didn't hear it. Nothing changed. I had people call my radio talk show. Yeah, I had COVID real bad, went to White County Hospital, sat there for 6 hours. They said, well, going home, come back and feeling worse. So we got to the point where nobody from the health department wanted to come on my talk show anymore because I asked them questions they didn't like. But it dawned on me, the Surgeon General, Dr. Bledsoe, is running for Lieutenant Governor. I'm thinking, well, I bet he'll come on the show. And sure enough, he did. Now, I'm very impressed with Dr. Bledsoe because I looked at his bio, and he spent years as medical missionary, other side of the world, third world countries, did a lot of good things, did the Lord's work. I'm thinking, maybe I can talk sense with this guy. So I said, sir, you're the Surgeon General of the state. You got the bully pulpit. We're hearing from way too many people, Siloam Springs, Town Hall, people calling my radio show, saying that people aren't being treated. They're not given anything for this. I said, so would you please put out a statement urging doctors and healthcare facilities to please treat people who have COVID? Now, I didn't even mention ivermectin. I didn't even mention hydroxychloroquine. Can you put out a statement, tell them, come on. And his answer shocked me. He said, well, the doctors in Arkansas are really sharp and the hospital is doing a great job. I don't think anybody's sitting around waiting to hear from me what to do about COVID. So when you're doing an interview and you get an answer you don't expect, you have to shift gears. I said, okay, Dr. Bledsoe, you're in charge of the ER in Russellville, right? Yeah. Okay, what's standard operating procedure if somebody shows up symptomatic, test positive for COVID? Well, we don't really have standard operating procedure. It's just a case-by-case basis. We'll leave it up to the doctors. But he did say he thought very highly of monoclonal antibodies. Now, I've heard a lot of good things about monoclonal antibodies, if you qualify. And I missed the part, if you qualify. I talked to a nurse a few days later, and she explained what you have to do to qualify monoclonal antibodies. If you're over 65, you qualify. If you're African American, whatever age, you qualify. If you're morbidly obese, you qualify. If you have some other kind of underlying comorbidity, you qualify. I said, let me make sure I get this straight. If I'm white, I'm in my 40s, I'm in the gym all my life, I've been in great shape, never really been seriously ill, but now I got COVID. She's like, yeah, you wouldn't qualify. I had a friend who was a family law attorney. Last summer, she went to a clinic in Little Rock because she had COVID and had the same name on it the big hospital had on it. And they said, go home, come back and feel worse. 3 or 4 days later, her daughter drove her to the hospital where they said, oh, we're sorry, you missed the 3-day window of opportunity for treatment, but we'll go ahead and admit you're putting you to bed. Eventually put her on a ventilator, and 3 weeks later, she expired. You know, to not do the good you know you should do is just as bad as doing the bad. I mean, that's what we're taught, right? My wife and I stopped watching Fox News after they were part of the stealing the election. We started watching this TCM, Turner Classic Movies. A lot of great old movies we want to see, never seen before. One was called Judgment at Nuremberg, where the concentration camp guards said we were just following orders. Somebody told me this thing about why the hospitals and the doctors don't really want to treat people. It has something to do with the CARES Act, the federal bill that passed. I'm like, I don't think that's an excuse. I mean, there's no statute of limitations on murder. One of the wonderful things about being elected governor is that on your first day in office, there are all these letters on your desk, letters of resignation from the heads of all the departments and the agencies. And I've been saying for weeks, well, one of the people I'm definitely going to accept is Dr. Romero, the head of the Arkansas Department of Health. And oddly enough, lo and behold, just a few weeks ago, he said, see ya, I'm out of here. Going to work for the CDC. I'm like, well, gee, maybe I do have a chance at this governorship of Arkansas. But we've got to start treating people who have diseases with things we know work. I will sign a bill making ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine available over the counter. You know, it's outrageous. And it's a serious disease now. Last summer, one of my sons was on a group text with me and a couple of his uncles and a friend of ours, and he said, y'all pray for me. I've got COVID and I haven't eaten any solid food since Friday. And this is Wednesday. And I was shocked and horrified. I called a good friend of mine who's our family doctor down in Panama City, Florida, and he prescribed ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and a steroid. The CVS pharmacy in Niceville, Florida, slow walked about 24 hours. By the time my son got his meds, he was gasping for air. I think we might have almost lost him, but by the grace of God, he lived and gradually got better. UAMS fed a story to Little Rock TV stations a few months back about ivermectin. It's a fake news story. Ivermectin? That's horse paste. People call 911. Over ODing on horse paste, Poison Control Center. Why y'all taking horse paste? And 3 out of the 4 TV stations just ran with it. To his credit, Bob Clausen, Channel 4, is like, wait a minute, I'm not just putting this on my air. I need some research. I need some backup for this. Well, UAMS said it. Dr. Cam Patterson, head of UAMS, knows full well that 7 or 8 years ago, the people who developed ivermectin won a Nobel Prize for medicine for how wonderfully it works for human beings. And yet he had them plant this fake news story, and people just ran with it. There's no journalism anymore. Well, you may have said it. May as well be true. Now, that's somebody else whose resignation I will accept. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I'm sick and tired of Walmart and the Chamber of Commerce shoving their liberal ideologies down our throat and trying to run this state. They won't be able to do it if I'm the governor. In closing, Sarah has raised $13 million 90% of which is either from PACs or folks out of state. She charges $5,000 or $6,000 a plate to hear her talk for 10 minutes in Birmingham or Austin or Mar-a-Lago, wherever. I don't need $13 million to win the nomination. I don't even need $1.3 million. If I can raise 1% of what she's raised, $130,000, and we're close to halfway there, I'll get my message out to enough people using social media and YouTube, and I'll be the nominee. Because everywhere I go, people say, well, we were supporting Sarah, but now we're voting for you. If enough people hear my message, because there's a difference between having money and having a message. If enough people hear my message, I'll be the governor. Because whoever the Republican nominee is going to beat whoever the sacrificial lamb is for the Democrats. That's not even an issue. The website is elect.washburn.com. If y'all want to throw in a few bucks, or if you can't afford to do that, you want to volunteer, either way, I appreciate y'all. God bless you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate your patience. Thank you, dear. Appreciate you.